Chapter 60. The Civil Trial, Part 2. John chapter 19, verses 1 to 16. Then Pilate therefore took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe, and said, Hail, King of the Jews! And they smote him with their hands. Pilate therefore went forth again, and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that ye may know that I find no fault in him. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate saith unto them, Behold the man. When the chief priests therefore and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him! Crucify him! Pilate saith unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. The Jews answered him, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again into the judgment hall, and saith unto Jesus, Whence art thou? But Jesus gave him no answer. Then saith Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and have power to release thee? Jesus answered, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore he that delivered me unto thee hath the greater sin. And from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him. But the Jews cried out, saying, If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth, and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he saith unto the Jews, Behold your king. But they cried out again, Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him! Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, We have no king but Caesar. Then delivered he them therefore unto them to be crucified, and they took Jesus, and led him away. John chapter 19, verses 1 to 16. The religious leaders were determined to compel Pilate to crucify Jesus, however unjustly. Pilate, on the other hand, knew that Judea was a troublesome area for the emperor, and he was determined not to be ruled by the Judeans. The Judean attitude was that any abuse of one of their people was offensive to them all. Pilate therefore decided to make Jesus an object of their pity, and he was turned over to the soldiers. A crown of thorns was pressed unto his head. He was covered with a purple or royal robe in mockery, and he was struck again and again by the soldiers, becoming what Pilate hoped was an image of pity, with a blood-streaked face. Verses 1 to 3. Jesus was then presented to the chief priests and officers by Pilate, with the statements, I find no fault in him, verse 4, and Behold the man, verse 5. Instead of being aroused to pity, the leaders and officers cried out, Crucify him! Crucify him! Pilate, in disgust, told them to take Jesus and crucify him, but he himself found no fault in him. Verse 6. The answer of the Jewish leaders was, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. Verse 7. At this point, Pilate, who knew of Jesus as a miracle worker, became, quote, more afraid, end quote. Verse 8. Jesus was again inside in the judgment hall, so Pilate went to him to ask, Whence art thou? But Jesus did not answer. Verse 9. Pilate was irritated. He was trying to save this man's life, and yet he was given no answer. He said angrily, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and have power to release thee? Verse 10. Pilate was saying, I have total power over you, so you had better answer me. Jesus knew that Pilate moved in fear of Rome's disapproval, and in fear of a negative report to Rome by the Jewish leaders, but Jesus referred neither to Rome's power nor to that of the Sanhedrin, citing God's power instead. Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore, he that delivered me unto thee hath the greater sin. Verse 11. This was a startling answer, because Jesus spoke of the religious leaders and Pilate as sinning in their conduct of this trial, although the greater sin belonged to the men of the Sanhedrin. Jesus, the one about to be executed, had put his judge and accusers in the dock instead. Pilate knew Jesus was right, and from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him. At this the leaders cried out, If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar. Verse 12. This charge placed Pilate in a difficult position. How could he free a man whose kingship claim was possibly a threat to Caesar? Rome would not readily recognize the nature of the charge, and the life of a troublemaker should be sacrificed by a governor to keep the Roman peace. By viewing the messianic claim as a royalist claim, the religious leaders placed a deadly twist upon the trial. It would be difficult to explain away this charge. Pilate then had Jesus brought out and placed in a public spot for the pronouncement of the sentence. The charge that he was working against Caesar's interest satisfied Pilate. Pilate's patron was Sejanus, who was executed in AD 31. Pilate already had a record of troubles with the Jews, so that any further trouble could lead to his downfall and even death. Verse 13. If the reckoning of time is Roman, the 6th hour would be like ours, the 6th from midnight. Pilate presented Jesus to the religious leaders, saying, with anger and contempt, Behold your king. Verse 14. The blood-stained prisoner was what they deserved, like it or not. They cried out, however, Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him! Pilate asked, Shall I, or must I, crucify your king? Verse 15. The religious leaders then shouted, We have no king but Caesar. They rejected God incarnate for a pagan emperor. There was nothing more that Pilate could say. The religious leaders had rejected a great and good miracle worker, possibly divine, for a political leader with a reputation that diminished as he aged, according to Suetonius. So Pilate delivered Jesus to them to be crucified by Roman officers, and they took Jesus and led him away. Verse 16. The culminating charge against Jesus was, He made himself the Son of God. Verse 7. This charge was never investigated or shown to be false. The leaders called it high blasphemy, which thereby merited death. They refused to admit that it could be a true statement. The religious leaders were ready to believe in God, provided he kept far from them and allowed them to rule in his name. The nearness of God was intolerable to them. As we have seen, truth has an inescapably moral dimension. In a fallen, sinful world, truth will be hated, most of all truth incarnate. Truth is disruptive and divisive in a fallen world, and hence truth is crucified. If truth could be intellectually affirmed without consequences, it would be popular enough and meaningless, because truth always has consequences. The purely intellectual definitions of truth are inoffensive and lifeless. Philosophers in an earlier era, employing Hellenic terms, reduced the Trinity to substance, the Father, structure, the Son, and act, the Spirit. Such a Trinity creates no offense. It can be no more than the idea of nature analyzed. It is essentially an intellectual concept, and no more. But God the Son is a person, the second person of the Godhead. He is our Creator and Judge, our Redeemer, or our Prosecutor. There is no escaping Him. Psalm 139 verses 7 to 12 tells us that neither hell nor the remotest places can hide us from Him, as St. Augustine and Francis Thompson in The Hound of Heaven testified. The moral dimension of truth centers on Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was the judge, even as he stood before Pilate, and in that trial all men and all courts were tried and found wanting. When men neglect the fact of God's invasion of history in the person of Jesus Christ, they neglect truth and justice, and their own salvation. In a fallen world, the power of a lie is real and very great. We see this in the trial of Jesus Christ. But only the truth conquers death and is resurrected. God, who made all things, ordains that all things serve and glorify Him.